Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. So today is November 29th,
The day, 2 days
2020.
after we all gained 25 pounds.
Yes, so join me if you would. Let's start with an opening affirmative prayer. So acknowledge that there's one source of all life, whatever we may call it. Father, Mother, God, infinite intelligence, universal love, all that is. It is the spirit, the creator of all life, the supporter and embracer of all life, and we are all a part of it. We are each extensions of that, having a life that enriches the world. And so today we contemplate this idea of self empathy, self compassion. For we know that we learn empathy and the need for it for others and compassion for others. But today we explore that we too deserve compassion from ourselves. And so we know that just as spirit, as God loves us and has compassion for us, so do we learn it for ourselves. For as we do so, we also expand our compassion for others. We give thanks for this opportunity to meet and explore. We give thanks, we release, and together we say,
And
and
so it
so
is.
it is. So, Bob, tell us,
Yes,
what is the difference between self pity and self compassion?
I'd like to answer that, but right now I'm feeling sorry for myself. So,
As
well,
long as you're funny about it, as long as you're funny about it, that's
right.
okay.
Well, the self pity is interestingly a circle, and you feel bad about yourself, and feeling bad about yourself continues to perpetuate feeling bad about yourself, and it doesn't have an end that is useful. Where self compassion, you can feel sorry for yourself. And it's reasonable that you would feel sorry for or bad about whatever you're feeling sorry or bad about. But that is not where you stop. What you need to do, what we would choose to do is to ask ourselves, how can I accept me and the conditions that I'm in and move forward? How can I love myself in spite of whatever behavior or whatever I've done? And I guess an example of that would be if you committed a crime and you were in jail, you would be serving a sentence for the crime you committed. But it's not necessary for you then to beat yourself up while you're there. What's necessary for you to do is to say, I may be being punished by, or I may be stuck in the condition that I'm in for this time being, but how could I not be the condition? How could I treat myself as a valuable and important person? So you often see, as an example, people who've been imprisoned getting their GED or going to college or writing a book, or what they're saying is, I am not my crime. I am not the thing I feel bad about. I am not the thing for which I'm being punished. I am more than that, and I need and deserve to have a life that has value and expresses itself. So self pity, when you think about it, really doesn't allow for anything other than the kind of circular process that's going on, as opposed to compassion, which is, I'm doing the best that I can, and now what can I do in favor of me and in favor of the spirit that is within me to move forward? So compassion doesn't have a lot of room for allowing yourself to dwell on what's wrong, but it doesn't reject it. It simply says it's a matter of it is so. So you have suffered, so you have done, you have made mistakes, you have erred, you have done whatever you've done. And as again, I've often gone back to Albert Ellis's statement, the great psychologist who said, we're always doing the best we can, given what we know and what we believe. When we know differently, when we believe differently, we can behave differently. And we have a choice. We can choose to now move forward. But compassion is that wonderful shift away from the suffering into the realization that I am not my suffering.
Okay, and so to go into that a little bit more, with self pity to me is kind of like the ultimate victimhood,
Mhm.
and it's a downward spiral. because when you feel sorry for yourself, it makes you even less powerful. You just lose all your power because you're helpless and hopeless. And so it's not constructive at all, except maybe for a little bit. If it gets you into examining self compassion, it could be helpful. And I'd like to point out that self compassion is something you can go back and do in your past too, as you remember painful times. Because, when we're in painful times, we're just trying to get through it. We're just doing the best we can, given whatever tools we have. So you're busy surviving the hard times, and there's really not much time for self introspection. But we look back over the past and we examine how we behaved, what we did, and you can do so with a lot of compassion for that 12-year-old, that 15-year-old, that 20-year-old, however old you were at the time, and say, "Ah, yeah, that was a tough time, and I was doing the best I could, but I didn't know many options." So, in other words, self compassion is looking at your life, even your present experience, much like a therapist um, would say, "Hey, cut yourself some slack. Given what you've just come through, or given what you've just experienced, I'd say you're doing the best you can, or you're doing pretty good." A therapist can help you see that you're not a bad person. You're a person experiencing challenges, and and then you expect more of yourself. You see, then you see other options for empowerment, for self-empowerment, which you can't see when you're in a state of self-pity and victimhood.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a situation that I encountered some time ago when I went to someone's house who had a new puppy, and the puppy peed in the house, and immediately the owner of the puppy went to grab the puppy, spanked the puppy, rubbed the puppy's face in it, and said, "Aha, now we're teaching you how to be housebroken." Well, breaking the puppy from puppyhood is not a solution. It doesn't improve the condition. So I said, would you mind if we tried a different way? And the owner said, "There is no other way. This is how I learned." I said, "This is how you learned to use the pot when you had to go and your mother or your father, they spanked you until you went in the well, no, they didn't do that to me." I said, "Well, we do that to ourselves all the time, and we do it to our pets." Anyway, I the next time I saw the puppy getting ready to pee, I grabbed the puppy, took him outside. He peed outside, and I said, "Oh, wonderful," and loved the puppy. And within probably another hour or two, because puppies drink a lot of water and often have to go off, and I could see it happening again. And I said, "You want to go outside?" And looked up at me and went outside, peed, got a congratulations again. And I went back to the owner and I said, "Does this work better?" He says, "Oh my God, I had no idea that you could train a puppy by that kind of a strategy." But I also thought, could you treat yourself with the same strategy? Could you treat yourself with the same kind of love and compassion as you would a puppy that has to go outside and doesn't know quite all the rules yet or how to do it? We don't have all the rules all laid out. We're not exactly sure how to manage every situation. So sometimes we slip up and we make mistakes. Now, how that ties into our spiritual lesson for the day, I think is important. If we're spiritual beings, if we have a spirit that wants to create and to imagine a better life, how can we give room for it? How can we create room for it? How can we create a space for that to happen? We can't if we're all wrapped up in judgment and make wrong and a set of, of punishments that preclude the divine expression of who we really are.
All right. So, for example, right now in this country, uh, most of us are more or less um, ordered to stay at home most of the time. I mean, you can go out and buy groceries, and really all the places are open. But if you're our age, you
40, 40,
you
40.
don't you don't want to be out and about very much. And even those who are younger, there are a lot of places that aren't open, and the jobs aren't open, and things like that. So some of us may be demonstrating behaviors that surprise us and we can be critical of, like comfort eating or comfort
Never,
drinking
never done those
or
things.
comfort a number of things. And it's very hard to be very, and it's very easy to be very self-critical. And yet a therapist might say, well, look at look at your circumstances. Look at what you've had to give up. Look at what you cannot do right now. You are in a mourning state. You're mourning the loss of your life. And so cut yourself a little slack. Not that you want to condone behavior that's harmful, self-harmful, but at least understandable.
Well,
Perhaps
what we've
understandable.
learned is that shame doesn't grow us. Shame doesn't make us better, and it doesn't improve. In fact, what shame does is it tends to want to have us do more of whatever it is we're ashamed of, because it's a relief of pain. And so when we're just trying to get some relief from pain, and there's not much that creates greater pain than shame, we don't we are in a perpetual circle of self-defeating behavior. And so if we were to say there's no benefit in shame, there's no benefit in guilt, there's no benefit in feeling bad, or in allowing myself to massage the feeling bad about myself, then what could I do? We have to open the door to the possibility of creating a better world, a better life, a better moment. And we can stop whatever we're doing whenever we choose to, even if it's only for a few minutes, to do something different. And that something different could be a choice that's toward the positive or toward affirming the quality of our spiritual nature, as opposed to defeating or undoing it.
Right. Now, the we don't hear much about the word compassion in our country, and the experts in this, because they study it and they practice it to become better at it, are the Buddhists. Compassion means with passion, with feeling. And so when you have compassion for another, you feel for them. You put yourself in their place and you feel kindness and helpfulness toward them. They have a song that, a chant like song that I learned that says it all. And I want to share the words with you because you could, that's what you want for yourself. And it actually starts with I and then extends it to you and then we. So it says, may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. And may I be happy. So that's what we mean by compassion. And then the song goes on to say, may you be, um, may you be, I have to remember the song. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. And may you be happy.
And the first step of that is giving yourself permission to sing that song, to hear that song, and to allow the words of that song to be real for you.
Yes,
It seems very
you start
awkward,
it with I.
right? If it feels pretty awkward in the beginning to say, I don't deserve that, or I'm too busy for that, or I've got too many other things that I need to repair for that to happen. You can begin to have compassion for yourself by simply saying yes to it. There's not a number of things you have to do first. There's not a lot of things you have to clean up or repair first. In fact, those things that you need to clean up and repair are more easily cleaned and repaired when you're in a state of compassion for yourself and for others than when you're in a state of guilt or shame or embarrassment or anger or upset or hurt. All of which are reasonable emotions to feel, but they're not a place to go live. They're not building blocks for the tomorrow you want to be in.
Right. See, shame is a feeling that you have about who you are, which is pretty hard to change. You know, guilt is about is a bad feeling about something you've done, feeling bad about something you've done. But shame is feeling bad about who you are. Um, you know, so if you were ever shamed, you know it's a terrible, terrible feeling. And so um, shame cannot survive in the face of self-compassion. So if you've ever had any shame, try exercising self-compassion. I found yesterday asking myself, what would I do differently right now if I had more self-compassion? Because I tend to push myself and work longer at a project than would be good for me or that I would expect of anybody else. So my answer to myself was, if I had more self-compassion, I'd give myself a little rest right now, a little break. And so that's one way just to learn self-compassion, is just to ask yourself the question, if I had more self-compassion, what would I do or feel differently right now?
So and when Judith said that, I think I'm going to take a nap. I said, so you're quitting work early today?
Just a break from standing up in the kitchen.
Yeah, well, I mean, so now the laziness begins, That inner critic is there for ourselves all of the time. And, sometimes the best we can do is to say, if I were not me, or if I were talking to a person who didn't have shame or guilt or wasn't somehow seriously flawed, what would they do? What would I allow them to do? What would I do if I were in their place? And that sometimes can help us free us up from. But we have a lot of unspoken anxiety and unspoken shame and unspoken guilt and unspoken hurt that tends to run us without us even realizing it. And so self-compassion is a moment of coming to terms with all of that and saying, even if things are so much even worse than I had suspected, do they need to continue to be that way? Could I give myself a vacation or a break from that? Could I do something different?
Bob, could you give us an example of what the self-talk might be when someone is letting their guilt and shame run them?
Well, I think the example would be this very thing that you were doing. When you said, I'm going to take a nap, I would say, so now you're getting lazy.
Mm.
So you've got a lot done today, but there's a lot more you haven't done. Think about all the things you haven't done every day. How long is that nap going to go on? I mean, you probably want to sleep the rest of the day. When you get up, do you think you'll do anything constructive? I don't think so. Remember the last time you
You
took
know how you are.
remember the last time you took a 20-minute nap and it lasted for an hour and a half? We'll never forget that. You know, the problem with the critic is unrelenting, and the critic has no memory. Remember that I got up and I also fixed it. Yeah, you fixed dinner, but you were late. I mean, so the critic, the part of us that unfortunately is the judge and jury, goes all the way back to earliest childhood. Can you ever remember your parents saying, you should be ashamed of that? You should be ashamed of yourself. They didn't say, but just for a little while, or
Right.
it's not about you as a person, you're really okay. No, they said you should feel ashamed and we're going to banish you now from the world of people. Go to
Go to
your
your room.
and think about it.
Right.
Think about
Or shame on
right,
you.
yeah.
Oh,
Think about the shame
shame
you've
on
just
you.
right. And
Oh,
I mean, if you got that message, it doesn't take but a heartbeat to resurrect that. Have you ever been outdoors and somebody said, "Hey, stupid," and you turned around? They weren't talking to you, but you turned around. Now you think you turned around to see who the stupid person was, but you also turned around as much as a reflex as anything else. So we already have stupid built in. We already have, you have something to be ashamed of. We already have that your laziness has always been a part of you. We have a conversation in the background, unfortunately, that is unrelenting and not very spiritual and has no compassion at all for anyone or anything. We can start by showing compassion for other people very often before we can even show compassion for ourselves. But then we could ask ourselves, could I treat myself at least as well as the people I treat with compassion? Could I back into self-compassion by being considerate of me like I might be a total stranger? We are actually nicer often to strangers than we are to ourselves,
mhm,
which is,
mhm.
if we think about ourselves as spiritual beings and we treat total strangers better than we treat ourselves, we have become a stranger to ourselves. And being a stranger to ourselves is not very helpful.
And also we don't give ourselves much slack for being human beings. We were just studying a Seth book. He calls it our creaturehood, our
Mhm.
humanity, our creaturehood. And he gives us carte blanche to feel all our feelings and express all our feelings, to fully be in our creaturehood. As spirit, we chose to be here in this human body. And yet a lot of us expect ourselves to be perfect like we imagine spirit to be, and not human, having human appetites and human trial and errors. I don't want to call them failings. Trial and errors and mistakes. And so self-compassion can also be compassion for your wrong choices and your mistakes and your in your creaturehood, you know.
To get in touch with our creaturehood at another level, the people that have done it best are comedians. And I say comedians have done it best because they take a normal situation and push it to its outer limit, which is the feeling tone that is often associated with whatever's going on. So when when a comedian wants to make a joke, they'll often exaggerate the condition. And we laugh because the exaggeration matches the feeling tone that often goes with the situation. And Ella DeGeneres, she does a little thing on walking, and she slips, and
Trips.
she
She
trips,
trips.
yeah, and she sees somebody across the street that sees her trip, and so she immediately turns her trip into a run because heaven forbid somebody should see her trip. And that running, well, that's so absurd, and so, but how often have we slipped or tripped and tried to somehow make that into something different than it was because we're so on edge with being rejected, with being made wrong, with looking stupid.
Well, and people laugh often.
Yeah.
I've fallen when I was younger, and people standing around laugh. I never understood that reaction. It was nothing to laugh about, if you hurt yourself, which I did on stairs. And their a good friend was at the bottom laughing at me. Well, I know we put that fall in a lot of comedic situations, and so it's an automatic response for a lot of people. But
Well, and
it
it's
doesn't
also,
feel good to be laughed at.
and the laughter is often the anxiety that goes with having to face an emotional situation that one doesn't really want to have to face or have to face. And so we have a lot of anxiety when a comedian delivers a joke that's on us about our own nature. And we laugh not just because it's funny, we laugh because, oh my God, that's really uncomfortable. And it's so true. And it's a chance for self examination, but also to take ourselves less seriously. If comedians have taught us anything, they've taught us to be less serious about the condition that we're in and to realize it's a condition.
As adults, we don't experience too much of that of being laughed at. But I had a reaction that surprised me myself. I was in the swimming pool. Bob and I bicycle and swim, and bicycling. I had a strap in the back that went like that, so I had a white X mark on my back, which I don't care about. Who cares, But a woman in the pool pointed and laughed and said, "Ha ha ha! You have a white X on your back." And I found myself choosing different bicycling tops to eliminate that X on my back that I didn't even care about. But it did not feel good to be laughed at. So,
Well, it speaks to how unconsciously sensitive we are to any criticism or any judgment, but it also speaks to
right.
the inherent quality of judgment that we walk around with about ourselves. We are often not meaning to, but we're walking on the edge of self rejection.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
because we're
that's
walking
true.
on that sharp edge, when anybody says, that stripe, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. That could be, oh my God, my life has been ruined. I will go home now and I will never come out of never go to the pool again. It sounds absurd, but we live on that edge of rejection. And the trouble is we're living on the
Our
edge.
inner critic.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
living on the edge of our own self-rejection. So if we're teaching anything today or talking about anything today that hopefully has value, it is that inner critic is not your spiritual nature. That inner critic and that judge is not who you are. It's a voice inside that has been given life by people that you wouldn't normally want to have support or be in your life necessarily. And it has a life of its own, and it's not your authentic self. It's a reflexive self. It's a hollow self. It's a shallow self. And we need to be careful that we don't listen to that and get our guidance from that about how we want to live our lives when we want to live our lives from another place that's bigger, that's richer, that's fuller, that's more meaningful than that single voice. It's a hollow voice. And when next time you hear it, you can say, that's a hollow, shallow voice that I'm not going to listen to.
Right. And I think as we develop more self-compassion, it's a practice like the Buddhists do to have more compassion for others. I was very touched this morning. I read in the Costco monthly magazine
Mm.
about people who have just had compassion for others and asked themselves, how could I help? And I was most impressed by a story about two young teenagers, a brother and a sister, who, when the pandemic first started, asked themselves how they could help in their town. And they found that the hospitals and the nursing homes and all the caregivers didn't have any face shields or PPE, or didn't have enough. And so they were students where they used, with their robotics club, they used a 3D printer. And they got permission from their teacher, even though the school was closed, to use these printers to make the kind of shields where a band goes around. So they made the bands with their 3D printer and put together these face shields. Their mother helped them start a GoFundMe page to get money for the supplies. And they have provided 5,500 face shields to this day to providers. So I was just so impressed that young teenagers came up with this idea, and the article is full of lots of other people who started
Mhm.
global not-for-profits when they just asked themselves, "How could I help?" And so if we can develop more compassion along with developing self-compassion, what a better world this will be.
And when we develop self-compassion, when we're not sitting as a judge about ourselves, we can better look at the community we live in and say, what are the needs here? It's easy to get caught up
Yeah,
in just trying to be enough rather than saying, I am enough. What could enough do now?
exactly.
Now that I see the possibility out there, is it really important that my socks are color coordinated with my shirt, or that something else matches or goes? Really, what's more important than that is what I'm contributing, and how do I feel about that contribution? And when you're reduced to making small judgments about people's appearance, know that you're making those same judgments about yourself, and that often that sets the parameters for the kind of caring that you're able to do or not do as a result of that. And so
Mm.
what we're wanting to do is to make our world larger, make our world greater. And the way we do that is to consider ourselves as a great part of that, able to make and making a contribution. I've recently, because my new little book, The Diary of a Mindful Dog, has been out now for a couple of months. I'm starting to get letters from people that tell me that it's by their bedstand, or that they read it regularly, or that they're going to be reading it for a very long time. And what that tells me is that our thoughts and our behaviors and our actions live a lot longer than we think they do, both toward ourselves and toward other people. The book for me is a way of seeing the life that a thought has after it's left my lips. And you can have that happen too, and you are having it happen too, even if you don't know it. And you'll see it from time to time. Somebody will comment on Facebook or something, tell me about a person who's changed your life. Suddenly there'll be a slew of posts that go back 30 and 40 years to a conversation that the person that was having that conversation has long since forgotten. And that conversation changed that person's life. Those conversations are the conversations we need to be having with ourselves to also change our own lives in the direction we want them to go.
Indeed. So, do you want to close with a prayer?
I think so. Yeah. So let's. And first off, thank you all for being here today, and thank you for the contribution that you make in consciousness. Thank you for the contribution you make in love and kindness. And for those of you that want to, you're also welcome to go to the our CSL Palm Beaches website and make a physical contribution so that we can continue to do what we're doing. And this is who we are, cslpalmbeaches.org. Not that you don't already know that, but we exist as a result of you. And so I want to move into treatment now, into recognizing that inherent in each of us is all the good that can possibly exist in a universe. Within each of us is infinite possibility. Within each of us, there is an opportunity for divine expression in every area of our lives. We say yes to the divine opportunity. We say yes to the beauty, to the love, and to the joy that lives and breathes and has its being in each of us. We say yes to the joy and to the laughter, and to not taking ourselves so seriously and allowing ourselves to just be, knowing that we are beings of love and joy, that we are beings filled with possibility and good. We say thank you. We say thank you, thank you, thank you, and allow it to be so in every area of our lives. Now I say, and we say together, and
So
so it is.
so it is.
We're going to now close our recording part and continue on to enjoy all of you that are with us today.